because it should start on the Facebook. Should there it maybe goes.
Is this live?
Hey, yes.
Oh,
So I can totally stop that if you'd like.
that's okay.
Alrighty. Uh, so there we go. Hello, hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity with your podcast host Keegan, and this is your podcast for all mental health, addiction, recovery issues, and topics. And today we have a very special guest, and her name is Patricia Herlevy.
Mhm.
Her, all right, sorry.
That's good enough.
I usually get the first names pretty well, and then it's the last names that I've seen some really interesting last names as of late, so I'm trying to get better. But it's kind of one of those things. Once I hit record, the pressure's on, and I have a speech impediment. So, anyways, Patricia, tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, where are you from? What kind of brought you on the show? What do you got to share?
Okay, I am from Washington State, and I've grown up pretty much all over Western Washington.
Okay.
And I'm a Reiki practitioner, and I do a lot of more holistic types of things.
Mm-hmm.
And what brought me to the show is you were looking for guests on Facebook, and I mentioned my Lyme story, and you said, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
do you want to be on my show?" So I think it's the Lyme story that brought me onto your show.
Yeah. We were talking about Lyme disease, uh, which was really interesting. So, it's great. You're a Reiki practitioner.
Hmm.
I love Reiki. I have a friend that is a great one, and it's just one of those holistic ways that people can go about just getting healthy, just
Hmm.
doing something totally different that a lot of people don't really know exists, but it is gaining popularity, and I'm glad for that for you and for everyone else. So, but with that Lyme disease, you've told me so. Why don't you kind of tell the audience like what happened and how you went about getting better?
Okay. The short version of it is this is kind of funny. I went to Vermont. So I mean
Okay.
anybody who lives in Vermont will go, "Oh, okay, I get that." Or anybody who's in the Northeast or the Midwest, it's
Mm-hmm.
tick central. And I went to Vermont. Okay, so during the pandemic, I was in lockdown and I was just wanting freedom like so bad. And I
Mm-hmm.
had this map on the wall of the US. And I
Mm-hmm.
started thinking, well, I had just gotten certified as an animal communicator and Reiki and a bunch of different things. And I didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
stay in Washington at that point because of housing, because of a whole bunch of different things. So I set my
Mm-hmm.
sights on Vermont and I was going to go over there and be an animal communicator in Vermont.
Nah.
And I researched it for 2 years and I did everything that seemed reasonable on the surface. But then I get to Vermont and there's really nowhere to live. And it was kind of a really sad, depressing place. And, businesses were closing and, that post pandemic. And I had watched videos that happened before the pandemic. So Vermont was completely different after, right? Like every place
Mm.
was.
Yeah.
And it was shortly after I got there, I got bitten by ticks at an Airbnb. So,
Ah.
yeah, they hung the sheets out to dry in the sun, and ticks got on the sheets, and then ticks got on my back, and they got into place. I couldn't get them out of my back.
Oh no.
And so I had a homeopathic doctor I was consulting with, and she said, well, just take this one remedy. You should be fine. So I
Mm-hmm.
did, and I didn't know when I was supposed to stop taking the remedy. So I stopped, and then I started noticing that I was really tired. I mean, like really tired.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm.
go, oh, well, it's probably just because I'm stressed out because I'm in this place I've never been before. I'm looking for a place to live. I don't have any family or
Mm-hmm.
friends. And it was stressful. And so I
Uh-huh.
thought, well, that's what's going on. But then I started getting like these weird heart palpitations and sweating. And, this is in the spring.
Mm.
This is before it started getting hot.
Yeah.
And I was just feeling weird in the head. Like it's not like anything I can describe, but other Lyme patients have described it really well. It's you just
Mm-hmm.
feel completely like you're not in your body, but you're in your body, and you're looking in the mirror, and you don't know who that person is. And I started thinking, oh my god, like what's happening? Like this is getting really bad. really weird. And then
Mm-hmm.
it was when my legs started going numb on me that I went to a doctor, and he was Lyme specialist. And he said, well, I think it's probably, like a nerve in your lower back or something.
Huh.
But then I
Wow.
got other symptoms, and I go, will you please test me for Lyme disease? And so he did, and it came out positive.
Oh
But then he
boy.
goes, but this isn't a new infection. This is an old infection. And I go, well,
Huh.
I was bitten 4 months ago. And he goes, well,
Uh-huh.
that might count as an old infection. So
Weird.
then I was homeless with Lyme disease
Oh
in
no.
Vermont during a housing crisis. So that was um, not fun.
Oh no. I am
But
so sorry to
I
hear
did
that.
have some work writing for magazines and newspaper, and so there was some work coming in, and I had this little office in
Mm-hmm.
Brattleboro. But no, it was
Okay.
really strange because I didn't know anything about Lyme disease.
Okay.
And I
Uh.
interviewed an herbalist, and he told me something about Japanese knotweed, which is an invasive species plant that is one of the best treatments for Lyme.
Hmm.
That's botanical and holistic.
Uh
So
huh.
when I was diagnosed, the first thing I did was I went and bought one of his bottles of Japanese knotweed. It was like my first purchase. And I thought that all I had to do was just take one bottle of that
Mm-hmm.
and some cat's claw, and the infection would be gone, because when you normally
Uh
get an
huh.
infection, like a bladder infection or
Yeah.
whatever, you take some remedy for it and it goes away and you never have to deal with it again.
Uh huh.
But
Yeah.
it didn't go away, and
Oh no.
I still have it. So,
Oh
and that was in
man.
August of 2022 when I first started treating it.
So you've been dealing with it this whole time. Uh.
Yeah, and doctors don't want to treat it. Like
Why?
they just
Do they just, is it really complicated to treat? Is it more symptom
uh,
management than actual treatment?
I
Uh,
think it's a little of everything. I think there's a political reason. I mean, there's got to be a political reason, right?
really?
Insurance companies will only pay for the antibiotics, but only for a certain amount of time. Some of the treatments is to use long-term antibiotics on patients, and they can't get their insurance companies to pay for it. From
Mm-hmm.
what I've heard on support groups, you can treat it
Dang.
holistically, but that's not paid for by insurance. So
Uh-huh.
then it's out of your pocket, or you can
Mm.
apply for grants. But I mean, I don't know what the statistics are for how many people in the US alone have Lyme, but I remember it being pretty
Uh,
shockingly high.
Let me look. How many people in the U.S. have Lyme
Don't look up the
disease?
CDC though, because you won't get
The
the right
actual.
number.
All right. So, Hopkins.
Yeah, that would be a good source.
All right. So let's see. Uh, Around 36,000 cases a year, but not all
Okay.
cases are reported. Wow.
Yeah.
Holy
Or
cow.
you try to report it, but the doctors don't believe you. So it's like,
So, what makes it, what made it to where your doctor thought it was just a leg nerve, because, or lower back nerve, because there has to be something that kind of shouts Lyme disease a little bit more at a doctor, right? Or do you, with it being a political reason, do you really think that he was kind of like looking the other way, like, no, that it couldn't be that?
not him. No, he was honest. He was a very good doctor.
Okay.
Um, and one of the good doctors, there were some that were, I don't know, just annoying. But he was one of the good ones. And he actually diagnosed me and said that I was permanently disabled from the
Oh.
disease. But what happens with Lyme is it mimics other illnesses. And a lot of the
Oh.
times, what you're dealing with, especially with state insurance,
Mm-hmm.
is you have to jump through a bunch of hoops, I think, is what the impression that I get, depending on which state you're in. And so they have
Mm-hmm.
to test you for everything else before they test you for Lyme, to just
Mm.
rule everything else out. And Lyme is a tricky disease, it's hard to treat.
Mm-hmm.
It's this bacteria called Borrelia that it can change shapes and go from being a spiral shape to a flat shape. It puts a film around itself, much like the plaque that you get on your teeth, a
Huh.
biofilm. And it's hard to treat
Wow.
with antibiotics. And then there was people telling me that it will go from being in your blood to being in the tissues of your body, where it will hide and wait for the opportune opportunistic time to come back out. So
Huh.
you can do the antibiotics, it looks like it's gone, but it's not
Hmm.
for some people. For other people, they can heal with antibiotics. And then there's the group like me. I didn't do antibiotics, I did plants. I did plant antibiotics.
Okay.
If if
N-
you've already had it disseminate through your body, like if you just got bit and you go and you get the antibiotics, then it, good
mhm.
chance that you will get rid of the disease. But if you've been waiting 4 months, a year, 10 years, you've been misdiagnosed for 20 years, and then they finally
Mhm.
go, oh my God, you got Lyme, which has happened. I've
Uh-huh.
talked to people who've had that happen. By that point,
Oh man.
there's not a whole lot you can do. You have to go with the holistic
Mhm.
care, and it's not that people don't get better; they do get better. Some people, and some people don't.
Yeah.
And I don't know what is the difference between, like, I don't know what is the difference between the people who get better and the people who don't get better. I don't know, like, what is the they probably have pre-existing conditions. It could be in an environment where it's not very healing. I mean, I'm not sure um, why why that happens, because some
Hmm.
people will say, hey, I'm better, I've been in remission for 10 years or something. and
Yeah.
and then other people are, they just can't kick it out of their system.
That is that's very strange. So it's kind of like a mimic virus,
Mhm.
and it also has some built up defense mechanisms.
Yeah.
So it's definitely trying to, well, stay hidden for sure. And it seems like it does a good job,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And that's that's kind of one of those things. It seems like those itty bitty microbiological lives just can really ruin our life. I
Mhm.
mean, look at COVID. I mean,
Yeah.
that changed the whole world. And I mean, we even have the bubonic plague. So, all so many different things. And Lyme disease just happens to be one that I guess is kind of just not talked about a whole lot. I grew up in the outdoors with Boy Scouts and stuff, so
Mhm.
I was well aware of like ticks and stuff, and I've had to pull many of them off of me, and I've sat there and worried about it. And I've always been worried about the Lone Star tick
Yeah. Yeah.
because the uh, the allergy to red meat possibility, and I'm allergic to so many other foods that it's like, well, red meat is like a huge part of my diet. If I'm allergic to that, what do I eat? But that wouldn't necessarily put as much of a hamper on me as I can see it has put on you with Lyme disease. And so, like, one of my questions that I have right off the top of my head is, does Reiki help with your Lyme disease?
It helps with a lot of the symptoms, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. I mean, I think if I went to, besides doing Reiki on myself, I think if I went to
Mm-hmm.
practitioners, I'd have a lot, not saying I'm not good at Reiki, but, when you're doing it on yourself, it's probably not as
Mm-hmm.
powerful as going
Yeah.
to somebody who's been doing Reiki for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I know I had a twisted foot, totally off the topic, and
Mm-hmm.
I was in Putney, Vermont, which is where I got Lyme. And
Mm.
I went to this Reiki master, and I hobbled into her office and I walked out without hobbling out of her office. So Reiki is very powerful. Uh,
Yeah.
and she also did other things besides the Reiki. She was shamanic, she did drumming, she did singing. I mean, it was pretty amazing. And so I credit her to like healing my foot. But up until that point,
Mm-hmm.
my foot was hurting. I injured it before going to Vermont, and I was hobbling for about 3 weeks by that point, I think it was. And
Oh
I
man.
was walking normal after that. I didn't even think about it. Like, I just forgot that my foot was even injured. And so she did this amazing job. So Reiki is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anybody's ever healed from Lyme with Reiki. I don't. You could do a
Mm-hmm.
survey and find out. I don't. I haven't heard of it.
Not a
I
lot of.
know acupuncture
Mm-hmm.
has been very successful in helping people. So
Really?
yeah, there's a lot of people that say they've gone into remission having acupuncture.
That's interesting. It seems like all these ancient and holistic ways are making their way back into the mainstream,
Hmm.
which is very interesting. Uh,
Well, yeah.
and so, with that being said, acupuncture being another holistic remedy for it, and that Reiki, I do have to kind of agree that it wouldn't be as powerful on yourself. Uh,
Hmm.
I would look at it as like dirty water filling up dirty water.
Right, because I'm trying
And
to heal myself of a
mm-hmm,
yeah, and
but
also I think I tend to also get into a really negative frame of mind. Not when I'm
mm,
doing Reiki, but then like I'll do Reiki, I'll feel really good, and then in the middle of the day, I'm in a negative frame of mind. And so
mm-hmm,
I'm working on becoming more mindful.
mm,
So when these thoughts come up, to stop them in their tracks rather than let them just keep ruminating throughout the rest of the day until I feel
mm-hmm,
depressed or anxious. Because I realized
mm-hmm,
that the depression and anxiety that I've ever felt started with a thought. Like it started
mm,
with like just like a seed was planted. And what
yep,
if I had not accepted the seed? What if I had said, well, I don't want to listen to
mm-hmm,
that? And so
yep,
with Reiki, I might feel good after doing a Reiki session, but then I might go online and see a headline, and maybe that upsets me, or the
mm-hmm,
reactivity to things would just counteract all the good things that Reiki just did.
mm,
So, it cancels it out almost.
yeah.
So
Uh,
I don't know if it works that way for other people getting Reiki, but
well, I kind of have a theory on it. I think that in a sense, we're all being bombarded by different energies throughout the day,
mm,
knowingly and unknowingly, and that we're kind of like a battery ourselves. And so,
right,
uh,
yeah,
like at the end of the day, we can sit there and we can feel charged and energized, and or at the end of the day, we can just feel like we're run down for absolutely no reason because we didn't get
hmm
enough sleep, we didn't eat right, or something like that. And I think for me, because I mean, I can do the same thing with meditations and stuff. I can be real good, and then like 4 hours later, it's like I need to redo it, or everything starts falling apart almost. But I think it's because I always look for those extremes in things, and so
hmm
after I'm not at the, I feel really good. Whenever it starts going to a baseline again, I think that's whenever I start to feel off because I'm
yeah,
always trying to go one way. But you do have a really good point with your mental health, especially whenever it's dealing with that Lyme disease, because I'm sure
hmm
that has brought on a lot of issues,
hmm
especially if you had anything past that, or sorry, previous to that,
yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
like for instance, I've broken my femur, and I'm bipolar, uh, ADHD, autistic, stuff like that. And so
hmm
for me, breaking my leg was like the worst thing ever. And so I can only imagine having Lyme disease,
Yeah.
because you're sitting there with these thoughts that, like, I know for me, I would be wondering if it's ever going to go away. And I'm sure that crosses your mind,
yeah,
right?
yeah. No one wants it. It's like get out of here.
Yeah. Um.
That's an invader of your body. It's like
Mhm.
it's cross boundaries. It's using your body for its own. Like any virus or bacteria that's harmful
Mhm.
is like in your body, and it's just basically exploiting you.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
yes, it can affect cognitive. In fact, one of the set of symptoms for Lyme disease is neurological and cognitive. For especially people who've had it long-term Lyme or persistent Lyme,
Mhm.
it can give you depression on steroids and anxiety on steroids, and
Oh.
often some of those mental health diseases are diagnosed, but really what's happening is it's not a mental health diagnosis, it's Lyme disease.
Huh.
And they've seen this in children especially, like and then when they actually treat the bacteria, um, the children start getting better. But until they realize that the child has Lyme disease,
Mhm.
because a child will go from just being, like everything's normal to all of a sudden acting out. And they
Huh.
never did that before. Or the sudden they're depressed, or they're, a lot of the times they get diagnosed as being bipolar
Mhm.
or schizophrenia in some cases. I saw some
Huh.
documentaries on that, and I'm like, wow, I didn't know that Lyme could do all that. But
No
it's
way.
different for it seems to be different for children than it is for adults, though.
Huh.
I think it's
That
harder it seems like it to be harder on children.
that's really interesting. I had no idea. Um. It almost
Yeah,
sounds
I
like
didn't
the opposite.
either. I'm
Yeah, it almost sounds like the opposite of chickenpox. Like we try to get kids to have the chickenpox because if you're older and get chickenpox, it can kill you.
Yeah.
Uh, but Lyme disease, having such adverse effects on the youth, seems that makes me wonder. Like, do I need to go get tested for Lyme disease? I just told how I grew up outside in Boy Scouts, and I pulled ticks off of me. Like, what are some of the things that long-term Lyme disease people have to look out for? Or what is the test that you can maybe get from a doctor?
Well, the test that's most accurate, I can't pronounce it, but I think it's like Igenex or something. It's usually not covered
Hmm.
by, well, it's not covered by state insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Some states, I guess, Washington State doesn't cover it. But at least this is what I'm told by people in
Mm-hmm.
the Lyme support group. But it is the most accurate test. I think it's like 90 something percent. Whereas the one that you normally get when you go to the doctor, the Western blot test, is only like 50%. So it
Wow.
can be a false positive or a false negative. And so
That.
that's where diagnosing becomes really difficult.
Wow.
So a lot of people have gone and got the other test, and it's an expensive test. It's like, I think it's like, I saw a price for it was like $1,200.
Holy cow.
Yeah, well, lab work's expensive anyways. I mean, we just never know how much
Yeah.
it is because insurance will cover it. But I mean, if you were to get the
Mm-hmm.
bills for lab work, it would probably be pretty high.
Oh, jeez.
But
That's
it's
ridiculous.
accurate, like whatever it says is,
Mm-hmm.
it's never, people will go with that one. So to go, if
Mm-hmm.
you want to prove that you have it. Some doctors will just go with the symptoms, like they'll test and it'll just
Mm-hmm.
keep coming out negative, but the person does have Lyme because again, the
Uh-huh.
test is not very, it's not very
Accurate.
accurate. And
Mm-hmm.
I've watched a documentary on why it's not, and I can't remember, but it was something about they have to have so many bars that show up
Mm-hmm.
on on the blot test, and they
Mm-hmm.
took two of them out, like they removed two of them, so now
Mm-hmm.
it's harder to get them. You have to have them next to each other or something. I mean, I could be completely wrong because I might have misunderstood the documentary, but
Oh.
I remember watching like why the Lyme test isn't accurate or something.
Huh.
So, and that's the Western blot test, and then there's two tests. They'll do a
Mm-hmm.
double test with the Western
Uh.
blot. And my first test was positive, so I thought, oh, at least I got diagnosed early.
Mm-hmm.
But then the second test I got in Pittsburgh was negative, which I thought was a false
Huh.
negative, but um,
Mm-hmm.
they can't retest you. I mean, they can't just go, "Oh, we'll test you again." I mean,
Mm.
it's
It's kind of like,
actually, yeah, it's actually hard to get the insurance company to want to pay for it anyways. So
yeah. I mean, all you have to do is be like, "I sorry, well, I was running after my dog in the woods." You
I got
know.
bitten by a tick.
Yeah, just another tick fell on me. Like, what can I say? It's nature. It's life.
Well, I guess if you saw the tick and then you started having the symptoms and your doctor ruled
Mm-hmm.
everything else out, because it can again mimic Parkinson's and MS and
Mm.
dementia. I mean, it can mimic a lot of different things. But then
Wow.
so what happens is people are going like 20 years, 10 years, they're going to all these different neurologists, all these different doctors, and all the tests keep coming out normal. And then
Mm-hmm.
they'll go and get that one test and it will like show up that it won't just be Borrelia, but it'll be a bunch of infections that they have all at the same time, because
Huh.
they're getting sicker and sicker and sicker, but they're going to these doctors, and the doctors are
Mm-hmm.
testing them for everything but Lyme.
Wow.
And so it can be really
Wow.
frustrating for people. So there's some people that told me they didn't get diagnosed for 20 years after.
I can't imagine that. That sounds
Yeah,
like
I
a
don't know how
true
they live
living
that
hell.
long, but yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be a living hell. I would have to imagine that that disease was going dormant and then coming back several times. I'm sure. Oh, or maybe they just had it for a really, really long time and it was dormant. Uh,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes the symptoms don't show up till, with me it was right away, but for
Mm-hmm.
some people, if their body's got a strong immune system, they may just sequester it until a very stressful time in their life, and
Huh.
then they've got inflammation in their body and they're not
Mm-hmm.
sleeping well and they're dehydrated and not eating well, and maybe the bacteria has just been there the whole time, and it takes advantage of the weakened state of the mental state, the physical state. I mean, because when you have inflammation in your body, it's pretty ripe for a lot of infections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I mean, I'm no expert. I'm just somebody trying to make sense of it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, for sure. And you're right. From my knowledge, a lot of inflammation in the body usually leads to a bad thing. It is the body's way of trying to get blood to a certain part, but it
mhm,
is usually a sign that, hey, there's something going on here. It is a warning
mhm.
sign. And I really didn't know that Lyme disease did so much. I've always heard of Lyme disease and that it's bad, but
Yeah.
uh, the way that you're like explaining it and letting us know what it really is and
Mhm.
what kind of menace it can actually be makes me wonder, or actually makes me have to agree with you on some level that there has to be something political behind it. And I guess you
Yeah.
could say it is big pharma because with the test being that expensive, holy cow, like that is crazy.
Well,
But
that's just one of the tests, and that's
yeah,
that's
this
not
is true.
even. And I think the reason it is so expensive is people have to pay for it out of pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, most people that I've talked to had to. I think
Mm-hmm.
Medicare covered it for one woman, but
Hmm.
a lot of people I talked to said they had to pay for it themselves.
Yeah.
And
And
there are grants that will cover
mm-hmm.
medical expenses. They're usually for younger people, like under 26,
Oh wow.
but there are some that will cover for older people as well.
Okay.
And so people apply for those so they can get the test and get the treatment.
That's actually really cool. So anyone listening, if y'all need some medical grants, apparently they're out there. So I just there's money out there for everything it seems, but it seems
Or
like not.
GoFundMe.
Yeah,
A lot of people have raised through GoFundMe. So
yeah, this is very true for many things. But
yeah.
with Lyme disease, what other kind of things or challenges, I should say, have been brought upon by having this diagnosis and now dealing with the consequences of having this disease?
Well, it's been hard to work, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been applying for disability, but then I realized, do I even want to be on disability? I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's 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 kind of I'm just thinking how much of an invasion of my privacy it is,
Mm.
and not really wanting that much government in my life, at this
Yeah.
point. So, I mean, I said, I just am applying for this until I can recover, and then I
Mm-hmm.
will not be on this anymore because I don't think I can live like that.
Mm-hmm.
But my freedom is very important to me, and my privacy is really important to me. And
Mm-hmm.
so that I think a lot of people on Lyme have had to get on disability, and it's actually, if you can prove that you have Lyme to the Social Security, it's 100% disability. So
Wow.
yeah,
Huh.
and it does have, so it's made it really hard to work because the fatigue is compared to chronic fatigue. It has a lot of the same symptoms, and actually a doctor just diagnosed me with chronic fatigue, but I don't think that's what I have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens, they just try to give you another diagnosis because they don't know what to do with the Lyme.
Oh wow.
And they don't do it, they're not doing it to be malicious or anything, it's just doctors do
They
not know what to do with this disease, they just don't know.
okay.
They're
Okay.
not trained in medical school for this.
Yeah.
There is special training that they can get, for it. And some some doctors they're experts, and they
Mm-hmm.
have different types of treatments, and so they're too controversial for the insurance companies. So
Mm.
you'll call these doctors, and they'll say, "Yeah, I can get you an appointment," but it's going to be like, I know this. I called two doctors in the Pittsburgh area. One of them was
Uh-huh.
$800 for the first visit. The other one was okay. So one of them was $800, and you got two visits for the $800. The other one was
Mm-hmm.
$800 for a telephone visit. And I don't
Whoa.
even think that wasn't even labs.
Wow.
And the labs may or may not be covered by insurance because the insurance will only cover whoever,
Yeah.
whatever labs they cover.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people were just trying to that I met were just trying to treat it themselves, or
Mm-hmm.
they were going to alternative types of treatment.
Mm-hmm.
A lot
Uh
of chiropractic, osteopaths, things
yeah.
like that.
Okay. And so is that kind of how you got into Reiki?
No, I actually was into Reiki when I was feeling a lot better. I got into Reiki because the lockdowns were happening
Mm.
and I needed to do something with my mind. And
Uh-huh.
I also was starting to get into like, I had fostered a dog.
Mm.
And when he had to have his teeth removed, he was miserable. Like he was just moaning and I was just kind of crying because I
Mm.
was watching him suffer. And he was also dramatic. But anyways, dogs can be very dramatic.
Yeah.
Whoa, so I said to myself, it was like, I go, God, I wish I was an energy healer because I just
Mm.
wanted to lay my hands on him and help him. So then
Uh-huh.
it was exactly a year later when I enrolled in an online Reiki class, and I didn't think I could actually learn it online. I thought, well, I'll just try this as an experiment. There's no way I'm going to learn this online because everybody I
Mhm.
know went to in-person,
Mhm.
classes where they met all the other students and they practiced on each other and
Mhm.
all the rest of that. I go, there's just no way I'm going to learn it, and it was kind of a remote Reiki class.
Huh.
And then you could either become hands-on healer, you could become a remote healer. And so during the
Huh.
pandemic, everybody was becoming a remote healer
Yeah.
because there really wasn't, you couldn't really go to someone's house. You couldn't really have, it was not considered, I don't know. I mean, even doctors were doing telephone calls. So,
Mm.
so I took the courses and I loved it. I go, oh my gosh, this is the most incredible thing. I didn't know Reiki would be this wonderful.
Mhm.
I'd had Reiki sessions done on me, but I didn't know that I'd ever learn it. And
Mhm.
I just like fell in love with the man who created Reiki back in 1922 from Japan, the
Mhm.
Kawasui. I hope you won't hear the loud voices in the background. Um, so anyways, I just really saw myself not working with people, but working with animals.
Mhm.
And then, oh, well, if I'm going to work with animals, then I need to learn animal communication. So they
Mm.
kind of all these came into steps. And then a year after that, I go, well, I'm going to move to Vermont. And everybody thought I lost my, well, not everybody, but some people thought I'd lost my mind. Like, why are you going to Vermont? It's clear across the country.
Uh.
And that was kind of the appeal of it, was I wanted to go see what the other side of the country was like.
Mm.
Because I'd
Okay.
seen pictures of autumn and all this. I just,
All the
I saw movies in the Northeast. It was just kind of itching in my brain, like, oh, I wonder what it'd be like
Uh-huh.
if I went there. So I started exploring the idea. But again, I was watching old videos from 2019, when
Mhm.
everything was great in Vermont and I got there and everything was falling apart.
Oh
So,
man.
and had I not gotten Lyme disease, I think things would have worked out a lot better for me.
I'm
But
so
I
sorry to
just,
hear
the
that.
cognitive, again, the confusion and all the things that happen to your brain,
Mhm.
it was too hard to manage
I'm so
being in,
sorry.
go out and compete for housing on top of,
Yeah.
60 people applying for one apartment, it's like,
Mm.
and then you wait for
Yeah.
another 3 weeks for another one to come up available.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh that is a very tough and unfortunate game. And I am my deepest condolences. That is got to be very, very difficult. And I'm
Mm.
glad that you're still here and kicking though. It sounds because it sounds like you're making the best of it. It really does.
Yeah. I mean, it's really,
So
I mean, I need to spend my time recovering, like just resting more, but I end up being
mhm.
so enraged about some of the things that happen, of people
Oh
trying to get
yeah.
treatment and all the rest of that. So then I end up going on these groups and advocating along with the other people. And then I realized, yeah, we're all sick. Like, we're all sick and we're trying to
Yeah.
advocate. We need other people to do this for us. We don't,
Mhm. Y'all don't have
sometimes a
the
parent
energy.
will do it or a spouse will advocate for their partner. And that's really
Mhm.
sweet when they're out there. But there was one doctor, he was advocating, and he ended up dying from a heart attack because
Oh.
he had, well, originally he had the bacteria got in his heart. So then
Mm.
he went through a transplant. And then I think he
Oh
lasted
wow.
for a while after that. And then he just finally ended up dying of a heart attack because Lyme can give you
Mm.
heart attacks and strokes. And it can do more than most people realize. And I didn't
Mhm.
know that when I got it. Like, I just thought, well, this is just a bacteria. I'll just go and take these herbal antibiotics and I'll be better and I'm
Mhm.
going to move on with my life. And I had no idea about the controversy. I had no idea about the poor people going to doctors and being gaslit. I had
Mm.
no idea that people were suffering it for 20 years and not knowing. being able to get better, that they were in wheelchairs with oxygen, oxygen tanks. And I mean, I had seen that with people with chronic fatigue. I'd seen that with
Mm-hmm.
people with
Mm-hmm.
multiple chemical sensitivity syndrome, but I just did not have the awareness
Oh
about the
man.
disease. Like I just didn't know anything because I'm from Washington. We don't really talk a lot about it here. We don't really
Mm-hmm.
think about it. And we go out in the woods. I mean, Washington State, come on. I mean, it's like, it's a very woodsy place. It was
Uh-huh.
founded by what, loggers and,
Mm-hmm.
the gold miners, So it's a place where people go outdoors, they kayak, they go hiking, they go to camping,
Uh-huh.
and nobody here, at least before I left for Vermont, I don't remember anybody being really concerned about that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Uh,
you theoretically can get Lyme disease anywhere. So
yeah, especially if it's carried by ticks.
yeah, yeah,
And
and birds bring ticks, and birds
mm,
migrate from one area to the other. And they've actually said that birds are one of the main carriers. I thought it was deer, right? And I'm like, well, and it
uh-huh.
is deer, and then mice, but
Mm-hmm.
mice don't travel across the country, whereas birds do. And people
Yeah.
have found them on squirrels, like when the squirrels at the bird feeder, and they'll look on the squirrel and they're like, oh, that squirrel's got like ticks all over it. And of
Oh
course,
man.
dogs and cats can get them and bring them in the house, put them on,
Mm-hmm.
they shed them on because once the tick is done feeding off of you, it drops off.
Yeah.
So, it
Mm-hmm.
could get on someone else. So,
Yep.
or you could be petting the dog or something and the tick's not quite in their skin yet and it gets on you. And I had
Yep.
one like get on my finger and I was having the hardest time like just trying to get it off
Yeah.
my finger. I mean, it was almost like it had suction cups on it or something.
Yeah.
And I finally got it off of me, but it was like, and it just looks like a black dot. You can't, like, when they're really tiny, they don't look like
Mm-hmm.
anything
No.
until they're either adult or when they get full of blood. Otherwise, they're
Mm-hmm.
just like a little black speck.
Yeah.
And people
They can
probably
be.
mistake it just for dirt.
Mm-hmm.
Or
And
freckles. People have a lot of freckles or moles, or it can easily be mistaken for
yeah, and that's the
too.
scary thing about them too.
Oh no, it's just scary all the way around. It's very spooky Halloween. You can dress up like a tick, right? Like, go to people's doors. Oh, I have like Borrelia tick. So I wouldn't do that in places where people actually have Lyme, but
Yeah.
but
But man, Lyme disease is something that just never knew it was so impactful on someone's life. Uh,
mm,
like I know that I remember hearing Lyme disease. I went with heart attack. I'm not sure where that connection came in, but somewhere in my upbringing, Lyme disease equaled heart attack
hmm
after long term.
yeah,
And I just always assumed like there was something in between, but you just got sick and ended up having a heart attack. So I guess that's partially right, but I didn't
hmm
know that there was actually so much that could go on
yeah,
because
and it's
there,
hard to treat. It's hard to
yeah,
treat
and
because there are doctors out there who are very good doctors, and they mean
mm-hmm,
well for their patients, but they just don't know enough about Lyme. And
yeah,
they're just throwing their arms up, just like, I don't know how to treat this. And they'll suggest, go to a Lyme specialist.
mm-hmm,
And, the patient could be like me, that'd be low income and just not really have the money to go to a specialist.
mm,
That's not covered by insurance, but they'll say, well, see if they have a sliding fee or, some kind of grant. And it's like, well, you call the Lyme specialist, they don't have sliding fees.
yeah,
And they're trying to make a living just like everybody else. But some of them charge
yeah,
way too much money. I'm sorry, $800 for a visit. I think that seems to me exploitation.
mm-hmm,
Um, but then I think the whole medical industry is exploitation. So, I
unfortunately,
mean, and I think what Lyme disease is going to do is it's going to bring the conventional medicine to their knees. It's going to
mm,
get so expensive because they're doing way too many tests on things that the patients don't have, only to
mm,
get to what the patient does have, which is Lyme disease. And
mm-hmm,
it's costing insurance companies, especially when they keep getting negative tests, like, oh, we're going to test for MS, we're going to test for aneurysms, we're going to test for this, we're going to test for dementia, we're going to test,
mm-hmm,
for everything they test before they do the test on Lyme. When if they had done the test for Lyme using an accurate test, which I think they
mm-hmm,
should just cover, it'll save them money in the end.
uh-huh,
They would just, if they just do that one test, they'll have either a negative or positive, and then you'll know that it's not Lyme, right?
yeah.
Or it is
I
Lyme, and
was
then go from there. Just make it easy, but no, they don't want to do it that way.
Yeah, I
So,
was just about to say it would seem like if all these uh scenarios can happen if you can be diagnosed with all these different things, get treated for all these
Hmm.
different things, none of them are working,
Oh yeah.
and it ends up being Lyme. And it's not just once, it's not just twice, it's not in a remote area, it's all over the place, many different cases.
Hmm.
If you have that much compelling evidence, wouldn't you want to test before you do all these other crazy tests and treatments?
Yeah, it's a
You
mystery.
that
I don't know the answer to that.
and
Yeah, I was told that by one doctor I have to rule everything else out first.
which I
That
mean,
yeah, it wasn't the first doctor, but it was somebody more recent.
yeah, I mean, I can understand to a point, but whenever actually no, I can't. If it's something that can be
I
treated,
can't understand.
yeah, if it's something that can be treated fairly quickly and then have no adverse side effects, why not just do it? But that's one of the things
Yeah,
is
right.
I can understand if the test is unreliable, yeah, that okay, but how expensive is an unreliable test? But
I
then
know. I don't know how much that one is. It'd be nice to look it up and see how much it costs. But yeah,
yeah, let's see. Let's look real
we've
quick.
got the price for the Western blot test. I think it's Elias, and or Lisa. No, it's Alyssa. It's Alyssa, and the Western blot test. They do those two together.
Without insurance, about 125.
Oh, that's not
Uh,
too bad. That's probably why it's that's what
so
market's too cheap.
yeah. But then it can get a little bit more expensive, of course. But uh, it does seem like there could be something like if the world can sit there and come up with testing for COVID and spread
Mhm.
it as quickly as it did, surely we can come together for Lyme disease that's been around for much longer.
Oh,
And
and they have similar symptoms. That's the thing. Like people with long COVID and the people with chronic Lyme compare notes and they find out that the symptoms are incredibly similar. Probably not every
wow.
symptom, but a lot of them are having the same symptom. So what I would love to see is an alliance between pretty much all the people with invisible disabilities to just,
Mm-hmm.
become more of a coalition.
Yeah.
And instead of just the Lyme people, they probably already have this, just the Lyme people fighting for their rights and just the long COVID people
Mm-hmm.
fighting for, whatever help they need, that if all these people
Mm-hmm.
came together, it would be much stronger. I mean, it would be like, I don't know how many
Mm-hmm.
thousands of people it would, if you
Oh,
put it all together. And also chronic
millions.
fatigue and fibromyalgia. And I mean, how
Mm-hmm.
many times have those people been told that they're hypochondriacs and,
Mm-hmm.
not able to get treatment, being tested for everything else, and go, well, it might be arthritis, it may be this, it may be that. Sorry, it's none of those things. We can't treat
Mm-hmm.
you because we don't know how to treat this disease. And
Yeah.
it seems like, the only ones who do know how to treat it are your more of your integrative doctors, your functional
Mm-hmm.
medicine doctors, your not usually covered by insurance, like at
Yep.
least not state insurance, which if you're
Mm-hmm.
got fibromyalgia or any of these illnesses, you're probably low income because you can't work, unless you've got a wealthy spouse or
Mm-hmm.
you've got an inheritance or you have something to live off. But a
Yeah.
lot of people that you meet with fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue or multiple chemical sensitivity
Mm-hmm.
are probably on disability, and they're
Mm-hmm.
just barely, they can't really go pay for a naturopath out of their pocket,
Yeah.
or and it just seems that, well, the whole medical thing needs to change. It needs to encompass more of the
Mm-hmm.
holistic care, I think, because a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
people are leaning in that direction now. They're going more with holistic care. And if
Mm-hmm.
insurance covered that, I think insurance would actually benefit from that. But I don't know. I think in Western New York, they did something where they opened up their Medicaid to a lot of naturopaths and all the rest of that. But Pennsylvania, where it was the second place I lived after Vermont, um,
Mm-hmm.
naturopaths were not covered. Functional medicine, integrated medicine, none of that was covered by
Huh.
the state insurance in Pennsylvania. I don't
Yeah.
know about Medicare because that's different because people pay
Hmm.
into that.
Yeah.
But it didn't, yeah, it didn't cover it, so you had to go into conventional medicine, and they
Mm-hmm.
want to treat with antibiotics and they want to treat with things that I just don't want in my body.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went and had nerve tests done, thinking, oh good, I'll go have these painful nerve tests done on my legs, and then it'll
Mm-hmm.
prove that I have Lyme. But then I had the test and it came out negative, like it came out
Mm.
normal. And I'm like, how
Uh-huh.
is that possible when I'm walking into walls and I'm stumbling over
Mm.
my ankles and almost falling down? And, I have fallen down. And,
Mm.
like, how is this possible that there's no nerve signals? Like like, it's just normal. I go, how can my nerves be normal? And
Mm.
I will never do those tests again because they're incredibly painful. It's like you're getting
Mm.
electrical shocks in your leg to see how the nerve will
Ouch.
react to like shocks. So they're doing
Mm-hmm.
like different parts of your leg, and you're just going, oh my god. And then they go, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this. Then they keep turning up the volume on it. So
Yeah.
you start anticipating that the next one is going to be like even more painful. I'm almost done. I'm almost done. And you're just like, I don't know, my fists were clenched
Yeah.
because the pain was so bad. And I wanted to just slam my fist into the table I was on because it was so painful. And I go,
Yeah.
okay, because it was so painful, I guess that means that it's going to come out like it's going to show the Lyme or whatever. And he goes, no, it's painful for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then they poke holes in your leg with these
Ouch.
needles. Like they're punching these holes in your leg. And so I had
Mm-hmm.
like blood all over my legs, And I was like, great. I think I had like white pants or something with me. Or
Oh no.
yeah, no, I
That's
was
the worst.
yeah. And I go, oh, okay. So now like my legs are bleeding. And yeah, and the guy had like a swab and it had blood all over it. And I go, oh my God, what are you doing to me? Like conventional medicine torture.
Oh
And
man.
so I just went and had the nerve test because I wanted more evidence that I
Mm-hmm.
had this disease. So then I asked other Lyme patients, go, oh, no, that my nerve test came out normal too. And they
Mm-hmm.
go, and some of them even had spinal taps that came out normal.
Mm.
Yeah, really painful test.
Ouch. Yeah.
And then they went and had that one blood test, the one I told you about, not
Mm-hmm.
the expensive one, and it showed up with Lyme disease. So they went through all these tests and everything. Doctors are like, oh, we don't know what's wrong with you. We don't think there's anything wrong with you. And then and MRIs too. Yeah, MRIs. So they're getting this one lady said she got all of those tests. Everything came out normal, and she still had Lyme. And so
Wow.
how do you like find? I mean, how do you like get that
That.
diagnostic, to prove that you have it? Because otherwise, it feels like people are being gaslit, like
Mm-hmm.
by a disease, and
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
by the doctors. And they want to diagnose for other things. They want it to be
Mm-hmm.
something that's more mainstream or more known, or it's almost like they want you to have one of these other illnesses just so they can go,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is what you have, and I can put you on this pill, or I can
Yep.
give you this shot of whatever it is, or like, what is it, cortisone, or all the different things that they can sell. And then this
Mm-hmm.
particular thing, the only thing they can sell is the antibiotics.
Mm.
And the antibiotics have a lot of side effects, so some people
Mm.
don't want to get them, especially older
Oh
people
yeah.
don't
Yeah.
want them because they can lead to all kinds of stuff. um, if you read like if you read the fine print or watch the neurologic neurological YouTube channels for the neurological doctors, they actually said like it was three of the antibiotics you mentioned that caused neuropathy were ones that were all used to treat Lyme disease. And I
Wow.
was so happy at that point that I never went that route.
Yeah. No thanks.
Yeah,
Uh,
because they will use more than one antibiotic. So it's
mm.
not like, yeah, I can imagine with one antibiotic, so I can imagine having three of them.
Yeah. No thanks. Especially
That's
getting
when,
neuropathy and losing feeling in my hands and stuff. No thanks.
yeah, for me. And then the other thing they want to, if you have the neuropathy with Lyme, they want to
Mm-hmm.
treat, they want to test you for diabetes. So that's a big one. Well, because the
it.
neuropathy is usually associated with diabetes.
Uh
So
huh.
they figured the first thing when you say neuropathy, they automatically think that you have diabetes.
Oh no.
So when you get, they'll do like a big panel of lab tests,
Uh huh.
and one of them, well, they'll do one for cholesterol, they'll do one for diabetes, they'll do like your iron levels, B levels, like whether
Wow.
you're dehydrated or, and they're trying to rule. I mean, they're trying to rule other things out, but Lyme
Mm-hmm.
will leave you dehydrated. It
Mm-hmm.
will leave you with neuropathy. You will get vertigo and lightheadedness and stumbling, and you said that you were recovering
Mm-hmm.
from alcohol, it can feel like you're drunk when you have Lyme at times because you're
Yeah.
slurring your words, you're dizzy, it's you have a hard time walking and balance. I mean, if I were in public
Mm-hmm.
when I was having the worst episodes, I would have been taken over by, I mean, pulled over by a cop or something, and they probably
Oh
would have
man.
given me a test. You know what I mean? Because
Uh-huh.
I'd be slurring my words, I would be literally walking into walls. I was trying to walk straight and crashing against walls.
Oh
When I was
no.
in Pittsburgh, I was at an Airbnb with a narrow hallway, and every time I walked down the hallway, boom, I'd hit my shoulder on the wall, and my other leg would go up in the air, kind of. And I was
Oh
like, oh my God, this is really scary. And
yeah.
so then I started just not wanting to go anywhere. Like I would just wanted to
Mm-hmm.
stay safe in bed or just stay safe at home because I never knew when I was going to have an episode. Some people have seizures. I haven't had those.
Jeez.
Some Lyme people, I don't know how long they've had Lyme. I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
what's entailed with that, but there have
Mm-hmm.
been people with Lyme that have had seizures,
Oh no.
and
Well,
also multiple chemical sensitivity syndrome can cause seizures. So
oh boy.
yeah, so you don't know what your day is going to be like, so you have to also, the other thing you have to do with any disease, I would
Mm-hmm.
imagine, is you got to prioritize each day what you really need to get done.
Mm.
So if you don't really need to clean the house that day, then you just put it off to another day.
Uh-huh.
And if there's some things that you can't deal with right away, there are times where I just don't even eat a dinner because I just don't have the energy to cook anything, and so I'll just fast which isn't probably the healthiest thing to do, but I just don't have any energy left. And so you have to
Mm-hmm.
manage your energy. And
Yeah.
I think that's for I would think that would be for most health conditions where it's a chronic disease
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know when your symptoms are going to flare up. I mean, I feel really bad for people who have seizures because
Mm-hmm.
unless they have one of those dogs with them, they don't necessarily know like when it's coming on.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to hope when they go out with friends or wherever they're going that they're not going to have. I had a cousin, my cousin's daughter
Uh-huh.
had epilepsy, and she was just a child at the time. I go, oh my God, what's it going to be like when she grows up? And she has to, um, she was heavily medicated, um, and she was slurring her words and stuff because of
Oh
the
man.
medication she was on. But it was either that or she had seizures.
Uh-huh.
So, which I think they called fits.
Yeah.
But and I
Man.
go, oh, and that was a long, long time ago. I was back in the early '90s, and
Mm-hmm.
I just God, what's going to happen to her? She's an adult now.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of like thought, what is her life going to be like?
Yeah.
And nobody else. There was no genetic history of it in the family, so nobody really
Mm.
knew. And her brother didn't have it, so nobody really knew like how, why she had it or like what was
Huh.
going on with that.
Oh wow. That's crazy.
So yeah, so a lot
Huh.
of these chronic illnesses are
Mm-hmm.
people don't know. They don't
Mm-mm.
know like how what's going to happen during that day, and some of it can be very embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
um they're like, oh, I gotta go home, and they're like, why? Well, I'm having a Lyme flare up. And
Mm-hmm.
I had one friend, when I was looking for places to live, which I'm always looking for places to live, but
Uh-huh.
she said, well, don't tell them you have Lyme disease because nobody wants to hear about it. And so I get a
Mm.
lot of people like that, like, whether it's family members or people that I knew before I got Lyme,
Mm.
who have like no patience for it, no sympathy. And they just want me to be who I used to be before I had it. And I
That's
can't be that. Like, I'm not that, well, at
no.
least not right now. Right now, I'm
Mm-hmm.
having to focus on, needing some emotional support, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
really not going to get it from those people.
Yeah.
So I turn to
Well.
support groups online, which is what a lot of people are doing. So
Mm-hmm. And I'm really glad that we were able to find each other on Facebook because,
yeah.
like you said, we're trying to, like, I'm trying to build a mental health community,
Hmm.
and it's all invisible stuff. And so you're sitting
Yeah.
here fighting an invisible enemy as well.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I think you're right. If everyone just that was facing an invisible illness got together and just said like, "Hey, look, like, see us, we are here,"
Mhm.
I think it would be a lot more impactful.
Yeah, I
Because,
think we all understand. Like, we
mm-hmm,
have empathy
Yeah, because we know what it's like to be in those shoes, to be
for others
disregarded.
because yeah, yeah. And I think the people that I've met with Lyme,
Mm-hmm.
they're like the most well, not empathic so much, empathetic,
Empathetic.
compassionate people. They're so,
Mm-hmm.
they're so supportive of other people. They're just.
Yep.
I used to not join support groups because people would get nasty with each other,
Mm-hmm.
over different things. But the support groups for Lyme disease and also multiple chemical sensitivity syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
being kind toward each other, it's like it feels like a big family of people that I've never even met, in person.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you
That's
don't know
awesome.
very much about somebody just because they're online. But I mean, but the support when
Mm-hmm.
somebody's going through a hard time, like all the people that come on there to support that person and lift that person up,
Mm-hmm.
is
That.
it's kind of an antidote to some of the other darker stuff that's happening in the world.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to find, not that anybody wants to be sick, with something, but when you are sick with something, sometimes you discover
Mm-hmm.
a group or something you would have never known about because um, you didn't have those. Like, you're not going to relate to a Lyme group if you don't have Lyme and you don't know anybody with
Yeah.
Lyme, right?
Yep.
So it's almost like the invitation is to get sick, and then you join the group, and then you end up meeting some really
Mm.
incredible people.
Yeah. And it's
So at
got
least
its
that's the
ups and
good side
downs.
of it. Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
good side of it.
uh. Well, the downside to this episode is that we are near the end. But the good news is, I like to have people back on the show because life happens, and uh,
Mm,
I like to be able to sit there and catch up with people, see how either their profession's going, see how life's been treating them, how their recovery journey's going. And
mhm.
it sounds like you've got a little bit of a journey ahead of you, and I would love to interview you. Well, not interview. I'd love to have another conversation of while you're still going through treatment, getting better
Mhm.
from everything, and then uh, kind of do like a catch up, see how everything's going, and stuff like that. So if you would love to be back on the show, I would be more than happy to have you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it'd be
Awesome.
nice to see like what will be happening, a few months from now,
Mm-hmm.
and if I discover anything else that might help other people. So,
Oh yeah, for sure. And real quick, do you know the suicide hotline number?
not offhand. No, I mean,
It is 988. I just
988.
Yeah, I kind of like to throw that out there because suicide is one of those other things that is another invisible enemy, and
Yeah,
it takes a lot
yeah,
of people. So if we can teach our kids how to call 911, why can't we teach our friends and loved ones how to call 988 in the middle of a crisis?
yeah. Well, there's been a lot of actually Lyme people who have committed suicide. So,
Mm,
and that's the sad. I mean, it's always heartbreaking. And
mm-hmm.
these are the people that have tried a lot of different things and just weren't getting better. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's
Well,
heartbreaking for the community when that happens, for sure.
oh yeah, for sure. It's heartbreaking in general, and uh, but my best wishes and prayers and all that are with you. I will do my
Thanks.
best to send you all the healing energy that I can muster. Even though I'm not a Reiki practitioner, I can still send my own intentions.
Yeah, I
Uh,
appreciate that.
of course. And let's stay in touch. If you need
Okay.
anything, just let us know and we'll do what we can to support one another.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and good
but
luck on your own journey of recovery as well.
oh, well, thank you. It's going to be long and ongoing, but I'll be around to share my story with everyone. So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
it makes a difference. It really does. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, you're making a difference too by helping spread your story. So, I really appreciate you.
yeah, that's why I did it. So,
Well, with your help, we'll be able to get the word out about Lyme disease and how there could be something done about it to kind of help out everyone, it seems.
Mhm.
So, I think everyone could benefit from this, not just people with Lyme disease.
Mhm.
So I
Well,
can't think.
somebody may have it and not know they have it, and then they hear this and they go, "Oh, the symptoms sound like what I have,"
Mm-hmm.
and then they go get tested. So,
Yep. So watch the case just like skyrocket, and it's like, oh no.
it's not our fault.
Yeah. Ups and downs. But with that, I thank you once again, Patricia. You have a wonderful rest of your evening, and I will stay in touch, and we'll see you back on the show. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Of course. And to everyone else out there, thanks for listening on WDJY FM. Y'all have a wonderful weekend. And also, we'll see y'all next week. Shalom. And recording has stopped. Um, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was